Jesus said you will know them by their fruits. And I've been thinking a lot about the doctrine of eternal damnation and its fruits. And I've talked many times before on the channel about biblically why I believe in universal salvation. But today I thought I would look at some of the fruits of the doctrine of eternal damnation and to see what kind of fruits it's reaping. And what really got me thinking about this is 1 John 4:18, where it says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whosoever fears has not been perfected in love." And that verse is very interesting because mainstream Christianity, the one rooted in eternal damnation, is a fear-based religion. It is all about fear, and that is fundamentally what drives that form of Christianity. And this verse is very interesting. There is no fear in love. And of course, this whole chapter is about how God is love. So there is no fear in God, ultimately. And growing in God, growing in love, we will eventually lose our fear. Yes, starting out there is some fear and trembling, as Paul says. But at the same time, we're supposed to grow past that fear. We should have reverence for God, but ultimately we should move past fear. And as we grow in our faith, we need to move beyond all the fear, and we need to grow beyond it. But perfect love casts out fear. So, God is the perfect love, and he is casting out fear within us. Because fear has to do with punishment. And that's what really got me interested, because a lot of people, a few different questions they'll ask of universalists. One of the most common is, if universalism is true, why should I be moral? And another question very similar to this is, if universalism is true, why should we preach the gospel? And what I've learned about these two questions is that the people who ask them, it tells you more about them than it does you. Because what they're really saying is that the only reason that I act morally at all, the only reason that I live a moral life, a Christian life, is because I'm afraid of going to hell, and I have no other reasons why I do it. And honestly, I think that's giving us too much credit. The scriptures say we've all fallen short of the glory of God, and we're all only saved by the Holy Spirit and the grace working within us. So I think it's giving us too much credit to say that it's us keeping us on the moral path and on the right road, when it's ultimately the Holy Spirit keeping us on the moral path, the right road. I think that's giving us too much credit. And as for the question about evangelism, it's a very similar question. What they're telling you is they don't see any need for Christianity besides getting people out of hell. They don't see any other benefits to religion or the Christianity. They don't see any other benefit. They don't see any other reason to be a Christian. They have no other reason to be a Christian than the idea of eternal damnation. They have no other reason at all, which I think is ridiculous. And it's telling you more about them than it does you. And even then, a lot of people, instead of giving you an argument, they'll just try to make you feel afraid. They'll try to quote a random Bible verse at you, or they'll try to call you a heretic and telling you you're going to hell. All of it is about fear. The form of Christianity they believe in is a fear-based religion. They are afraid, and those at the top of it want to keep their power, and they keep their power with the idea of an eternal hell. And a lot of people, they like to say that they believe in the traditional view of hell. And for starters, I've talked about how there were many universalists in the early church. But apart from that, I would like to ask those who believe in the traditional view of hell 3 questions. And if you don't answer all 3 of these as yes, then you do not believe in a traditional view of hell. And this is showing that eternal hell has always been a fear-based ideology. And also showing that a lot of people are now moving away from it, as a lot of people increasingly find this, childish fable of eternal damnation unrealistic and unbelievable. So the first one is, do you believe hell is a place of literal fire and literal physical torment where the devil and his angels will torture you day and night for all of eternity? That is the traditional view of hell. And if you don't believe that, you don't believe in the traditional view of hell. The second is, do you believe the saints in heaven will be able to see the damned being tortured for all eternity, and that seeing the damned being tortured, that will bring the saints pleasure because they will see God's grace in sparing them for the mass damnata, and that their torture and the flames and the smoke ascending forever and ever, that will complete the sanctification of the saints, and that this will bring great pleasure to the saints. If you don't believe that, you don't believe in the traditional view of hell. And finally, do you believe that unbaptized babies go straight to hell when they die? If you don't believe that, you do not believe in the traditional view of hell. And that is the traditional view of hell. Those are just 3 points the traditional view of hell teaches. And if you don't believe those 3 points, you do not believe in the traditional view of hell. And I have a feeling that most people listening that do consider themselves traditionalists on hell do not believe in those 3 points. They either do not believe in one of them, and a lot of them don't believe in all 3 of them. But that is the traditional view of hell. That's what St. Augustine taught. St. Augustine is the backbone of Western teaching on eternal hell. And that's what most people throughout Christian history believed when it came to hell. Those 3 points. They believed hell is a literal place of fire and physical torture where you'll be tortured by the devil forever and ever. In fact, I think it's Charles Spurgeon who said that one time the devil will whack you, your body will become like Job, and the next you'll be double the body of Job, and so on and so forth for all of eternity. Your body will become, like Job over and over again, getting even worse. And, the devil's going to, play you like a banjo or something. I mean, it's just awful, graphic images of hell, but that was normal. In fact, it used to be very normal in churches of any denomination for the preachers to preach very hellfiery sermons. Even like modern independent fundamental Baptists are tame by comparison. I mean, it used to be very normal to preach very horrible hellfiery sermons. And, in the Middle Ages, they would have this idea of the hell mouth, where they would, they'd put a bunch of images of hell in church, and one of them was the hell mouth, and the belief was on the Day of Judgment, this giant dog-looking thing would eat up the damned. And it's all about fear. It is a fear-based religion, and it's all about being afraid. And they're trying to move away from it now. They're trying to make it more of a psychological torture now instead of the place of physical flames and physical torture, because they know that's not going to work anymore. They're trying to make it all psychological, like you send yourself to hell and you lock yourself in hell, and it's all like hell is like this blank void you're going to float in forever and no light, and you're just going to like be in your own agonizing torture because of your own sin. And they've tried to make it more psychological torture now for the modern age, but it's still a fear-based religion, and it's fundamentally a religion of fear. And whosoever fears has not been perfected in love, and that's very, true. If your whole religion is based off fear, which most Christians are, most of the mainstream Christians, especially modern evangelical Christianity, it is all about fear and getting people saved. Your religion, you've not been perfected in love because you're fundamentally very afraid. And a lot of people are living in fear of God. They're living in fear of hell, and that is their religion. And that's how we know it's a false gospel. And I thought I would look at some of the fruits of the Spirit. Jesus says, them other fruits, but Paul goes a bit more in depth about what these fruits are in Galatians 5:22 and 23 says, "But the fruits of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law." And, for the first fruit, love. I can tell you, for starters, that a lot of people, being able to feel love, being able to feel God, being able to have true love towards God, because a lot of people in this form of Christianity that a lot of people believe in, they don't really love God. It's just they love what they can get out of God. A lot of people, they're only Christian. They only care about Christianity so they can get out of hell. And it's not really because they love God. It's because they're afraid of going to hell. And, a lot of Christians, they don't really show love. They live a very fake life. I very strongly remember what John taught us in 1 John, that no one's ever seen God, but we see God when we love other people, and that we need to love our brother and love our neighbor. And a lot of Christians, they don't really ever love their neighbor. They don't like people that are different than them, people that disagree with them, and they don't really show that love. And a lot of Christians, the way you can tell that mainstream Christianity has failed is that people are not loving their neighbor, not loving their enemies, especially their enemies, but even their own neighbors, and even their own fellow Christians. Fundamentalists will split over the pettiest things. That's why you got a million different, independent Bible churches. They split over the pettiest things. They don't show love. And not to say that they're completely devoid of love, because there is a lot of love, but it's an imperfect love. It's not fully perfected. And I think of other things like peace. I skipped over joy. I'll get to that in a minute. But peace, as a fundamentalist, I never felt peace. I saw these people going to hell, and my whole life was trying to get people out of hell, trying to get people saved. I never felt the peace of God. This religion, you don't feel peace. You just feel fear and joy. A lot of people, they don't feel a lot of joy. A lot of Christians are very angry. I've noticed that. A lot of Christians are very, very angry people, and a lot of them are very prudish. I mean, I'm not trying to dunk on mainstream Christianity too much. I mean, there are a lot of wonderful, faithful Christians that do believe in eternal damnation, and some have become saints, fully sanctified, even though they believe in eternal hell. But I'm just saying, this idea of eternal hell, it reaps very negative fruit. And I think it's on the other things Paul says. I mean, for instance, like faithfulness. probably the biggest turner of atheists is the idea of eternal damnation. Atheists always talk about eternal damnation, and it drives so many people out of Christianity, and it keeps so many people from becoming Christian. The idea of eternal hell. The atheists have rightly pointed out that how could somebody be eternally tortured for a finite sin? It's irrational. It's not just at all. And the Christians will try to cope and come up with all these ridiculous answers, but there is no faithfulness really in it. A lot of people lose their faith over this, and a lot of people, they treat God like a vending machine because of it. It's all about what they can get out of God and not the other way around. And I just think of gentleness. So many of these churches, especially a lot of these churches, they're very emotional, and it's all about plucking on your heartstrings. And I can tell you, I've been to like a lot of those modern Pentecostal services, and I've been to fundamentalist services, and I can tell you that there's definitely not a lot of gentleness on a lot of these services. There's a lot of fear, a lot of emotionalism, really lacking gentleness. And, I can go on. I think eternal damnation causes problems for all the fruits of the spirits, but I just think the fruit of eternal damnation is fundamentally wicked. And I think that, that's why people have abandoned the traditional doctrine of hell, even though they don't like to admit it. Remember those 3 questions I asked you earlier? Those are the traditional doctrines, and there's other things associated with it, but those are three massive staples of the doctrine of eternal hell. Very few people believe in those anymore, and that's because they're just a bunch of stuff to make you very much afraid, and that doesn't work anymore because we're living in such a modern age, and a lot of people think this is all some ridiculous fable, which it is. This idea of eternal damnation is a ridiculous fable. It is a pagan myth imported into the church, and that's why everybody's trying to change their doctrine of hell. Everybody's trying to say, oh, the gates of hell are locked from the inside, and hell's not a place of literal torture. It's a place of like a dark void where you float around in darkness or something. It depends on the preacher, but they're trying to change their views on hell. And even annihilationism, which is better than eternal damnation, but still isn't really that great. It just makes God a murderer who destroys his own image. They're trying their best to change their doctrine of eternal damnation, but it isn't going to work. They're still fundamentally a fear-based religion, and it's all about fear. And that's all I got to say for today. If you're curious, I've made a lot of videos explaining universalism and explaining why biblically we believe in this. But y'all have a good day. God bless. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and share. And Christ will conquer.